So today we're still on the GBOM train of the acronym for the healthiest foods that we can put in our body every day. And today is Mushroom Day. And what I did was soak dried shiitake mushrooms, but any mushrooms are great. The primary function of mushrooms, which Bill will talk more about, is they're anti-cancer and they're anti-inflammatory. So we don't need a lot of them, actually. We just need one or two a day. And if you don't want to do them every day, that's fine. We don't. Maybe a couple of times a week is good. And we use quite a few more. So mushrooms, Bill, you're on.
Oh, okay. So yeah.
What's the value of these little gems?
Yeah, I think you touched on it. The main reason that Dr. Furman includes it in his GBOMs is the anti-cancer effect. It's basically eating mushrooms regularly is associated with a decreased risk of breast, stomach, colorectal, all the major cancers. And so the mushrooms that have these anti-cancer properties are, the white mushrooms, the cremini, the small ones, the little brown headed ones, portobellos, those great big ones, and then others that aren't quite as common, the oyster mushroom, shiitake, that's what we're using here today, and reishi mushrooms. They all have these anti-cancer properties. And one of the other properties that's unique to them is they have a nutrient that blocks the production of estrogen. And they feel like this quality in mushrooms that's so unique to mushrooms is probably what's responsible for the preventative effects of mushrooms against breast cancer. So it's been shown to, like women who eat just 10 grams of fresh mushrooms, 10 grams is like a third of an ounce.
Very, very good.
Yeah, it's like Connie says, one mushroom. Those that eat 10 grams of fresh mushrooms each day had like a 64% decreased risk of breast cancer. So, that's cutting the risk of breast cancer by more than half by eating one mushroom a day. So there are some unique qualities. And for me, I love them because they have such a unique texture and flavor. They really make a dish quite different from every other plant-based dish.
Yeah, they have what they are calling today of making a fuss over the umami flavor. But anyway, I soak these in boiling water for quite some time. You don't need to do it for a long time. And then the juice, the water that I used, I kept because I want to put it in the dish that we're going to make. So when I think of mushrooms and really featuring them, I think of a beautiful miso soup. And this is the way the mushrooms look dried. They're just dried. These are beautiful ones. And then I put them in a little pan and added water and boiled them and turned the flame off and let them set. And you remove the stem. And I put all the stems in the stock pot. And what I wanted to show you, this amount came from one dish, the miso soup. Now, not every dish that I make is that complex, but it's really worthwhile to save the insides of the squash, the stems of the kale, the outer layer of the mushrooms and ginger to go in the stock pot. So I'm going to show you the first step for miso soup, which is onion and ginger. And I like to cut the onions in what I call half moons rather than dice it like that. I don't know why, it's just pretty for a miso soup. So the onion and ginger are in there. I'm going to add my mushroom water. This is step one. And then we're going to add some stock. So show them what this looks like, if you would. It's kind of dark, and I want to tell you why it's dark in color. Those are all the peels that we boiled. We're going to just pour it in here. And use it as the soup base. Makes such a phenomenal soup base. The reason it's so dark is I used in this soup base also the insides of a squash and the seeds. They really darken the color, or beets, of course, will do that as well. So now we've got a nice pot full of stock. And we're going to put it on the flame. And then I'll show you the rest of the ingredients. I have to turn on the fan, it's noisy for me.
It's okay, you're just going too fast. Okay, go ahead.
So we just let that come to a boil and let the onion and ginger soften. Also, as soon as they start softening a bit, we'll add the mushrooms because they can cook for a long time. We'll add the kabocha squash. This is a squash with a green outer skin that you don't have to peel. The skin is the best part. It's the sweetest part of the squash. So we'll add a kabocha squash, and then we'll add carrot and daikon radish. Now, when you make miso soup, if you use all sweet taste, it doesn't have the same variety and interest that when you use daikon radish, or any radish or turnip works fine. This is a pungent flavor, and you've got your sweet carrots, your sweet squash, you've got the unami mushrooms. And then we're going to add a little bit of green vegetable. I do this mainly for the color, but also the flavor. So I'm going to add a little broccoli. And then right at the end, when we add the broccoli, we'll add the kale. And look how gorgeous this kale is. This came from the farm yesterday from our volunteering. And then right at the end, we'll garnish with onion. Now, seaweed. Wakame is the seaweed you use for miso soup. And you soak it in water, which this is my soaking water, purified water, and then cut it up. And it can be added anytime. I like to add it more toward the end. And you leave the lid off when you add this so that the seaweed flavor boils off. You don't really taste it, but it's got so many nutrients for the body. This water, you could use it in the soup, but I'm going to just dump it in my stock pot, veggie peels, and it'll get incorporated into the next dish that way, so we don't lose any of the nutrients. At the very end, you take a cup of the broth from the soup, and you'll watch me do this. You add the miso and stir it up so that it dissolves. And then you add that right at the end after turning the flame off. If you boil the miso, you lose all of the beneficial nutrients and properties that it contains.
The probiotics, you lose
Yeah.
the probiotic benefit. Yeah, you still get a lot of the nutrients from the content of the food itself.
So we're going to use 2 misos, and I'll talk to you about those later. So we've got the soup going, and I'll just add these things as is appropriate. Bill has something to share with you.
Now, Connie mentioned we got that kale from the farm yesterday. This is the other thing we got from the farm. Is that amazing?
Gorgeous lettuce.
We feel so fortunate to have these growers, these organic growers right in our backyard practically. we go and we pull a few weeds and we go home with this. It's so great. We're
Yeah, so
happy.
if you're drawn to help farmers, organic farmers, it's such a great thing to just introduce yourself at a farmer's market and ask if they need any volunteer help. It's just been such a wonderful thing. How many years? This is our fourth year we've been doing that. And we feel so great when we come home after using our body in a more robust way at the farm. So that's the story of the miso soup. Now, what I'll do with all of these peelings is add purified water, put them in that pan after we discard what's already been boiled up, and start again. Boil that, and then add more veggies the next day or 2 days later and boil it up again. And then I have a wonderful broth for beans or soups that makes such a difference in the way our beans and lentil dishes taste. And it's got all the nutrients of the peelings and the innards of the squash.
Yeah, you can see how much nutrient is in this food still, not edible in the form it's in. We wouldn't want to have to chew through those tough stems and seeds of the squash and that. But by boiling it, we pull those nutrients out. It's like nutrient tea. So yeah, it makes a difference in our nutrient levels that we have in every dish that we use it in.
So this is the example of using mushrooms, these gorgeous shiitakes, and you can use fresh shiitakes. You don't need dried ones. They aren't always easy to find. Or you can use any mushroom in this soup. But shiitakes, I find for miso soup, give it a special flavor, texture, and taste. So you may want to just buy them fresh, cut them up, and use them in your miso soup. Mushrooms, G-bombs, the M in G-bombs to really support the body to be anti-cancer and anti-inflammatory. So with the miso, the first thing, of course, you want to do is put it in.
Don't you want the water first? No.
And then I want some of this darker. Look how dark it is.
So this looks like it's probably about 8 or 10 cups of soup, huh? And so how many tablespoons of miso in a soup this large?
Well, how many? I never think of it in those terms. You tell us what your formula is. I just sense it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think, isn't it a teaspoon per cup of liquid that
Oh.
you tell me all
Oh, maybe. I don't remember.
the time? Okay, so there is my miso. And now I'm going to add some hot water to that. And then stir it up until it dissolves. It doesn't take long. And then when the soup is completely cooked, I'll add that in.
You'll turn the heat off
Turn the
and then
heat
add
off
it so
and
it
add
won't
it in.
boil.
Yeah, so it won't boil.
So-
But you can see that dissolves pretty quickly. Doesn't take much time to dissolve it. And then I'll taste it. And if it needs more miso, I'll add a little bit more to more water and then to the soup.